So in the previous chapter, we have covered the for versus the while loop. Well, we know that we can break loops using the main condition in a while or exhausting the for loop. That's one way of breaking it, the natural way of breaking it. But somewhere within the loop, if you want to break it for some reason, how do you do it? But before we understand how the syntax works, let me give you a scenario. Say there are a sequence of numbers. Now, we're not saying sequence of numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is an order to it, but a sequence of numbers that have a different relation. Let's say the Fibonacci series, right? 0, 1, 1, 1 plus 1, 2, 2 plus 1, 3, 3 plus 2, 5, 5 plus 3, 8, so on and so forth. Here we want to find out if 8 is a Fibonacci number. That is the problem. We want to find out if 8 is a Fibonacci number or not. Well, when we come to data structures, we'll find out better ways of doing it. But until that point, if you don't know any specific data structure, all you have is a list of numbers. How do you know if 8 is a Fibonacci series or not? The only way to find out if you don't have a special algorithm is by iterating through each of the elements in the data set, right? So you look at the first number. Is it an 8? No. You look at this second number. Is it an 8? No. And you keep going on until you hit 8. And this is 8. Okay, we got the correct number. Now what do? You don't have to go forward, right? You found your answer. You stop right there and break the loop, right? If we were to write this using a while statement, there are a couple of ways to do it. Probably you'll write something like this. While, say you set up a flag, while found equals false. Or let's say not underscore found equals true. Okay, so you set up a flag and say while not underscore found. So that means we did not find it yet. As long as that is true, you do the iteration. I'm not writing the code here, but you just do the iteration. And if found, if you find that number, then you set not underscore found to be equal to true or false. And then the next time the iteration goes to the while loop for checking, it will find out that not found underscore found is false, and then it exits the while loop. So this is one way of breaking the while loop. This you're already aware of. I'm not talking about this way of breaking the loop. I'm talking about a situation where you don't even have to set the flag. If for some reason, say for example, if you don't want to write it like this, instead you don't want this flag variable, okay? You just say while true, meaning it will go on infinitely forever. In this case, you should be able to still break it because the loop can't go on forever, right? You still should be able to break it, meaning there should be some statement that says, okay, I have iterated it, and then finally I have found what I want, and then finally I'm going to say break. This is similar to the C program break, exactly the same way, or the Java programming break state. Anytime you want to break a loop without using flag variables or without exhausting the sequence that you are supposed to iterate through, you can use the break statement. It's just another way to break the while loop. It's not the only. So the way the while loop and the break statement works, or for that matter the for loop, is you have a while statement and you have the condition, right? And this could be an infinite loop until you found out what you want, right? So this is the part of the program within the while loop where you search for what you want. And once you have found what you want, once you are satisfied that you are no longer need this loop, then you execute the break statement. So typically the break will be inside an if statement. If found, or if I have found what I want, then break. And as soon as Python hits the break statement, then everything underneath it within that while block will not be executed. So this will not be executed, and on top of that, the while statement or the while loop is broken. So this break statement does a couple of things. First thing, stops looping. Second thing, stops or rather does not execute the loop further. So there are two things the break statement does. It stops the while loop and then on top of that make sure that anything under the break statement is not executed. Now does it mean the program stops executing? No. The program continues after the while loop. So while is probably not the only statement, right? So you have while loops, for loops, and then some print statements. You have so many things in the program. Everything within that level of indentation or the block within the while stops executing and the program resumes here after the while block. So that's the break statement. So let's see an example. Let's code an example in the system. So here is the problem that we'll be working on. Say the user enters two numbers. Okay. Say the user enters the number 32 and 64. Okay. Just he enters two numbers. Our program should find out the nth odd number between 32 and 64. So what are the numbers between 32 and 64? 32, let me put it in a different, 33, 34, 35, so on until 62, 63, 64, all the way until 64. Now the user also says that he wants the, let's say, the 10th odd number. That's what the user wants. So if the user is asking us to find out the 10th odd number between a sequence of numbers that the user provides. So he doesn't provide the exact sequence, but he just provides us the first and last number. Now, how do you find this out? Well, we start searching and going through all the numbers one by one, right? So 32, let's say the first number is also inclusive. 32, is it an odd number? Nope. 33, is it an odd number? Yes, but it's the first odd number, right? Between this range, that is the first odd number. 34, odd number? No. Second. This is the second odd number. And as you keep going, somewhere down the line, maybe at 45, I don't know, maybe at 45, you find that this is the 10th odd number, and that's what the user wants. Now, at this point, you don't have to go further, right? There is no need to go further. You can stop and break the program or break the while loop like right here and then print out that 45 is the 10th odd number. Now I'm just picking a number 45 that might not be correct. The program will find it out. So how do you program this in the while loop? Well, like I said, you can use the while statement and a flag to let the while loop know that we have found it, so break it. That's one way of breaking it. That is something that we already know. Now we are going to look at the break statement, which is another way of breaking the while loop. So how do we program this? First is equal to, first we're going to store, so the user is going to enter three things, right? The first number, the last number, and the count. Meaning he wants the 10th number, 11th number, 12th number. So first, our first underscore number equals, we're going to use the input function, right? Input function to take input from the user. And of course, we're going to use the int function to convert this string, because remember, input for the user is always written by Python as a string. But strings are not what we need. We need the number form of it. So if the user enters something like a 1 or 31, it will be taken in as 31. But the moment you use the int function, it will be converted to the number 31. All right? Okay, and then the last number. Last number equals same thing, int of input. Now within this input statement, we can use a prompt, which we are going to do in a bit. But you get the point, right? We take two numbers. And we also say count equals, again, it's an int. So we got everything that we need from the user. Now let's start executing the program. Now let's start writing the rest of the piece, the logic to find out what is the nth odd number. So the way to do that is every time we find a number, right, an odd number, okay, we keep incrementing the count. So we call it, let's say, nth odd no, equals 0. So right now we are at 0. The moment you find the first odd number, you increment this by 1, right? The second odd number incremented by 1, it goes up to 2, so on and so forth. So it's a counter to find out whether we have reached what the user requested or not. Okay, then we start with either a while loop or a for loop. Because remember, the break statement can work either in the for loop or in the while loop. So let's say for number in range of first underscore number, comma, last underscore number. So we are using the range function to create that range of numbers so that the for loop can iterate over all those numbers. So within that loop, the number variable will always be pointing to one number within that range. And every time the for loop iterates, it goes to the next number, the next number, the next number, right? Okay, so what do we do here? How do you find out if a number is odd or not? Simple, right? If it is divisible by 2 or not. So you write an if statement. If number percentage 2 equals 0. Remember, this is equal to or not. It's a question mark. It's not an assignment. It's a question mark. So if is divisible by 2, then it is an odd number. So you say n underscore odd underscore num equals nth underscore odd underscore num plus 1. You are just doing this increment just by one number, right? The next condition is, did we find out the 10th odd number or not? We found out the first odd number, okay, but we have to stop when we find the 10th odd number, isn't it? So we have to also do another if statement here saying if you need not do it here, you can also do it here. Let's write it here. If, because they're all part of the same for loop, if nth underscore odd underscore num equals 10, then just break. Then we have found what we want, right? Just break it. But here is the thing. Did we actually find out what the 10th number is? No, we did not. We just found out the 10th odd number and then we broke out of the loop, but are we telling the user that this is the 10th odd number? No. So in order to do that, we have to create another variable called odd underscore number. You could call it 10th odd number, something like that. Okay. So we could say 10th underscore odd number equals 0. Okay. And then over here, before breaking, what we are going to do is we are saying 10th underscore odd underscore number equals, what is the number? It's this number, and then break. Now break means what happens? This entire for loop breaks, right? And then over here we can say print 10th odd number equals, comma, and then you put the actual number. So this is a static text that always prints, and this is the dynamic variable. What is the number? 10th odd number. That's it. Is that clear? Let's go over it briefly. The user gives us three inputs. He gives us the first odd number, and that is this one. The last odd number, that is this one. And then the count. Is it the 10th number that he wants, or is it the 12th odd number that he wants? And that is, in this case, say for example, the 10th odd number. So he gives us three inputs. Now with those three inputs, we have got to iterate through the list of numbers, find out if a number is odd or not, and check if we have hit the 10th number of odd numbers, and then once that is done, break out from the loop, print it. And that's what this for loop does. It first creates a range, This range is used so that the for loop can iterate through the numbers, and we say first number, last number. So that is the range from 34 to 64. And then within the loop, we have a reference to each of the numbers, number 1, number 2, number 3, with every iteration. If number percentage 2 equal to 0, so this is where we verify if the number is odd or not. If it is odd, increment the count, meaning we are hitting the first odd number, we are hitting the second odd number, we are hitting the third odd number, so on and so on. And if we found that we have hit the 10th odd number somehow, then break. So this is where we are breaking out of the for loop and going to the next statement after the for loop. All right. So let's code this in Jupyter. So how do we code this? First, equals input. Okay. And like I said, this returns a string, right? So we're going to convert that to a string, to an integer. Integer, enter. So what is the first number? Let's say 32. Okay. Now it gives a blank prompt, right? Because the user is going to be entering 3 numbers. How do we tell the user that, okay, enter the first number here, enter the second number here, enter the nth odd number you want? We got to be able to prompt the user for the specific information that we need. The way we do that in Python in the text format is by using an input prompt. Enter the first number in the range. Something like that. Okay. Now if we execute that, see, it gives us a nice prompt. So the user knows what he's entering, which number he's entering now. Now in this case, we are entering the first odd number, 32. Okay. All right. And then we can say last underscore num equals enter input, and then another prompt. Enter the last number in the range. Okay. Shift enter, and then we're going to say 64. Okay, 32, 64, those are the numbers in the range. Next, we need to ask the user also for int odd number equals, again, int of input of enter the nth odd number you want. Okay, you can make it as descriptive as you want. And then I'm going to say I need the 10th odd, right? So we got all the inputs that we need from the user. Now we're going to start the program. How do we do this program? So we said before we do this program, we have to create a couple of variables that will hold the information for, like this one and this one, right? So what does each of them hold? This one holds a tracker, like a counter, right? And this one holds the actual number, 10th odd number, actual number. You could call this as a count if you want, or yeah, I can call it. Okay, so count equals 0. So this is counter track the sequence of odd numbers. Are we at the first odd number, second odd number, third number, so on and so on. Then we also need actual and odd number equals 0. We're going to just set it to 0. This will actually track for the nth odd number found in the for loop. Okay? Alright. Now we've got some variables to track. Now we're going to start the for loop. For number in, now we've got to create this range. And that range is going to be based off of first number and last number, right? First number, last number. Okay, for number in range, first number, comma, last number. Okay, now if we don't do anything, we can just print this number and see if Python is doing what we want. Okay, shift execute, not execute this. Oh, it says first, it's not a first, I'm sorry. First number, right? 32. Now Let's look at this range. Okay, 32, 33, 34. So the for loop is actually looping through all the numbers, starting with the beginning number that the user has entered and ending just before the last number that the user has entered. But do we want to include the last number or not? Maybe we want to include it, right? So we're going to say last number plus 1. Okay, we do that and hit enter. We're going to start with 32 all the way up until 64, which is the last number we have entered. Remember, 32, 64. That was the first and last numbers. Now the for loop is actually able to loop through all these numbers. Okay, good. And we don't need to print this number, but we want to find out if number is odd or not. And this is how we're going to find out, right? Marginal division 2 equals 0, meaning is it perfectly divisible by 2 or not? If it is perfectly divisible by 2, then, well, we have found out an odd number, right? So count equals count plus 1, right? We have found out an odd number, and then we're going to increment the count. We don't know if we have reached the 10th number or not. But remember, this is a loop. We might have reached in the second iteration, third iteration, fourth iteration. We don't know. So we have to write the loop in such a way that we should also be able to find out in this case whether we have reached the 10th odd number or not. Right? So if count equals 10, then that means we have found out the nth odd number, right? So actual odd number equals the number that we are iterating through the loop. Okay, and then we are done. So we use break. So the break statement breaks out of the if statement, this if statement, this if statement, and the for loop. So it's like an all-inclusive break statement. It breaks out of everything within that loop. Okay, and then where do you go? You go to the for loop and then say print nth odd number equals comma actual nth odd number, right? That's it. So let's try to execute this. Shift enter. Ooh, the nth odd number is 50. So between 32 and 64, the nth odd number is 60. Can we just quickly check? Right, so this is the first odd number, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and then eighth, ninth. 50 is not even an odd number, right? So 51 should be the odd number. Why is it that the program is giving us 50 as the odd number? That's interesting. Let's check. Oh, this is looking for even numbers, right? So, okay, what's the reason? This is actually it looks like this is looking for even numbers, not odd numbers. See, it should not be divisible by 2. That's the definition of an odd number, right? So we're going to say not equals. Not be equal to 0, only count those numbers, right? So let's try and execute this again. Shift, enter. Okay, there we go. 51. So that's our 10th odd number. All right, that was the break statement. So just to reiterate, a break statement. So just to reiterate, a break statement works by breaking for or a while loop. Could be any of those. As long as it's looping within that block, wherever you write a break statement, it breaks out of this entire block, number one. And number two, anything below the break statement will not be executed. And the program execution comes to the next statement after the for or while loop. So first thing is stops execution. Second thing is it will not be, everything below the break statement will not be executed. The third thing is execution continues after the loop. Okay, and another word, a fourth point to note is irrespective of the number of if statements or any other logical flow control statements, all of them will be broken. All logical if else statements within the loop will also be broken. All right? Okay.